Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs with Valor Ridge. Stirrings of the American Revolution, then and now. Out here at the Ridge, nice spring day, things are starting to warm up, and this time of year always has a special significance for me. Our ancestors realized the springtime is a time for rejuvenation, it's a time for getting the year started, being productive. So I want to talk about some things that happened in our past, in our nation's past, specifically when it comes to the American Revolution. In 1775, our ancestors considered themselves Englishmen. There was no talk of independence, there was no talk of anything of separation from Great Britain or things like that. They endured a lot. They were willing to abide a lot of violations of their rights and what they considered to be sacred. They were willing to abide taxation. They were willing to abide British troops in their midst and also even in their own houses in many cases, especially in Boston. They were very patient. They were very level-headed. Yes, they did protest. Yes, they did petition the Crown and Parliament for their grievances. They did all of those things. But what was the final straw for them was gun confiscation. What I'm talking about specifically was General Gage on April 19th, whose mission was to go out into the Massachusetts countryside and forcibly disarm the colonial militia. So why am I doing this video now? Because we have exactly the same stirrings that our forefathers had. Just a couple of days ago, we had a United States presidential candidate, Communist Bernie Sanders, who has said that the United States should follow New Zealand's lead and ban the very arms that we are expected and required to have as law-abiding citizens. He wants to get rid of semi-automatic firearms that can hold more than 5 rounds. But the most disturbing thing about this is that he says New Zealand is the model. It's on his Twitter feed if you go and look at this. And this is, to my knowledge, the first presidential candidate who has outright expressed a desire to ban these types of firearms. This is an extremely unpopular platform with the majority of Americans. And when you're talking 100 million gun owners, and you're talking a lot of people that use millions of these types of rifles, by far the most common types of firearms, semi-automatic pistols, semi-automatic rifles that have magazines that hold more than 5 rounds, this is extremely problematic. Now, our forefathers saw this as tyranny, and we know they saw this as tyranny because they were willing to stand and fight at places like Lexington and Concord. This is the very type of thing that enrages Americans. I do want you to understand, our forefathers did not want to break away from Britain at the start of the American Revolution. They considered themselves Englishmen. What they wanted was their natural rights restored under the constitutional monarchy. Well, here we are in 2019. As Americans, we are lawful. We have these firearms for defense of our homes and our families, but we also have them for defense of our country. We are expected to have these types of firearms. This is illustrated in the 29th Federalist by Alexander Hamilton and the 46th Federalist by James Madison, that we are armed. We have that right. The Second Amendment does not grant us the right to keep and bear arms. It simply recognizes something that existed before the United States came into being. When you have people in this country who are politicians, whether they're senators, representatives, or people that aspire to be presidential candidates, when you have language like this that is a severe infringement of our Second Amendment, and the last part of that is shall not be infringed, right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is exceptionally problematic. I never thought I would live to see the day where an outright open communist, and he can call himself a democratic socialist, but the man is an outright communist, as evidenced by his honeymoon in the Soviet Union in the 80s, as evidenced by his admiration of communist regimes throughout his life. A person who was not gainfully employed at all until he was in his 40s, and even then only gainfully employed as a politician who produces absolutely nothing but only strips rights away from people. This is an issue. It's an issue with me, and if you're watching this video, I know a lot of you out there have become exceptionally perturbed by the kind of rhetoric that the statists want. And it's mostly Democrats, but there are some Republicans as well. And I'm not either one. I'm sure as hell not a Democrat, but I do not appreciate what the Republican Party has stood for the last decade either. Look, I know a lot of us are at our wits' end. We wake up every day having to read news stories about how less free that we are, or people want to make us less free. Make no mistake about it, communism, socialism has no place in this country. It has no place in a constitutional republic. And per our own constitution, we are guaranteed a republican form of government at which socialism or communism has zero compatibility with our form of government. New Zealanders, I feel for you. Your politicians have betrayed you. They do not speak for you. And if I was in New Zealand right now, I would never give up my firearms. I would not turn them in. I would not register them. And you can see why, despite registration, despite vast amounts of gun control, the very type of gun control that statists want to enact in this country did not prevent a mass shooting from happening there. These are the very things that statists and gun control advocates are calling for in the United States. And you can see why they want registration, so that they have a shopping list to go down and forcibly take people's property and natural rights away from them when they deem it fit. To be frank, this nation, our freedoms, our way of life was earned with firearms. Our ancestors used firearms to establish the greatest nation on earth, to establish a government for the people, of the people, by the people. The purpose of government is to protect our rights, not take them away. Per our Declaration of Independence, our founding document. And to quote a friend of mine, we are a nation born out of armed rebellion, and those rights were earned in battle by Americans that did not want gun control, that didn't tolerate it. They were not going to be bullied and browbeaten by politicians who wanted to take that right away from them. The reality is this, that when government wants to strip your rights away from you, they're going to do it at the end of a barrel of a gun. How much more crucial is it then that we keep and maintain our rights with the exact same implements they want to use against us? We do have very good news. Just recently, the Missouri State Legislature in their Senate voted to ban all federal gun control in the state of Missouri. That is exactly the kind of legislation that has happened. Legislation to limit government, not expand it. And I wish and I hope that so many other states across this country enact the same kind of legislation. And if the federal government wants to violate state sovereignty, if they want to violate their citizens' rights, we have to be willing to look at our past. We have to be willing to look at our present situation and determine what kind of future we want for our children and for our grandchildren. This is the crucial test that we'll face in our lifetime. There's a lot of things that I'd like to say on this platform that if I would come out and say them, that I wouldn't be able to make videos on this platform anymore. I wouldn't be able to reach you. I wouldn't be able to make historical and political and firearms videos if I came right out and said it. But I can point you towards literature that does tell you things. A good place to start is a book called Resistance to Tyranny, and I've got a link in the description box below. I get that a lot of you are at your wits' end. I am too. I am frustrated that these politicians want to strip away our heritage. They want to strip away our rights. They want to strip away our way of life and remake the country in their image. Nope, not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime. And I know there's a lot of people watching this video in places like California and New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Washington, Oregon, Maryland. The list goes on and on, Hawaii. And I know that you're living in those places and that you feel like you can't do a whole lot. Listen, now's the time to stand up. Confront these people with knowledge. Confront them with your heritage, with your constitutional rights. You need to be courageous, and you need to be firm and resolute and demand that these politicians respect your rights. Because in the future, they're going to keep taking more or attempt to take more and more and more and more. And if you think that you're going to get justice in the courts, they put judges in place that agree lockstep with them, that the Constitution doesn't apply anymore, that it's outdated, that it's antiquated. So folks, I'm not going to comply with any more gun control. I'm not going to comply with things that violate our Constitution, and I'm not going to comply with things that destroy our American way of life. And I'm sure as hell not going to acquiesce to socialists and communists. They are antithetical to our constitutional republic. They are seditious. They are enemies of the state. They are not to be listened to, entertained, or obeyed. So my tagline is the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. And I have direct ancestors to the 7th great-grandfathers that fought in the American Revolution against the people that wanted to take their guns away. So you can draw your own parallels from history. Is it similar to 1775? Is it similar to what our ancestors faced? Are the violations of our natural rights more or less egregious? I'm going to leave that determination up to you. But if you're an honest student of history, you can see that our ancestors knew what it took to demand that government respect our natural rights. So the NRA, if you would adopt a stance like our founding fathers did, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right of pursuit of happiness, maybe you would stop hemorrhaging members. If you found the information in this video helpful, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to learn how to protect yourself, your family, your country, your way of life, and your Constitution, come on out to Valor Ridge and we can help you do just that. This is Reid Henrichs with Valor Ridge reminding you the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.